When everything changed, Rebecca Anderson sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside her husband's hospital bed, her fingers wrapped around his still hand. For 17 days, she had watched Daniel Hayes breathe with the help of machines, listened to the steady beep of monitors, and prayed for a miracle. The autumn sunlight filtered through the window, casting warm patterns across his peaceful face. She had memorized every detail during these endless days. The small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his temples, the strong line of his jaw that she loved to trace with her fingertips. The doctors had warned her about possible complications. Brain injuries were unpredictable, they said. When he woke up, things might be different. But Rebecca had refused to consider the worst possibilities. Daniel was strong. Their love was strong. They would get through this together, just like they had gotten through everything else in there for years of marriage. Stranger's eyes. That Tuesday morning started like all the others. Rebecca had brought fresh flowers from their garden, yellow roses that Daniel always said matched her smile. She was arranging them in a vase when she heard it. A soft groan. Her heart stopped. She spun around to see his eyelids fluttering, his fingers twitching against the white sheets. "Daniel," she whispered, rushing to his side. "Honey, can you hear me?" "I'm here. I'm right here." His eyes opened slowly, squinting against the light. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat as those familiar brown eyes focused on her face. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment everything would return to normal. But instead of recognition, instead of relief or joy, she saw only confusion in his gaze. He looked at her the way you might look at a kind stranger who had helped you pick up dropped papers on the street. Polite, uncertain, distant. "Sorry," Daniel said, his voice rough from disuse. "Do I know you?" The words hit Rebecca like ice water. "Daniel, it's me. It's Rebecca." "Your wife?" He blinked at her, his brow furrowing in concentration. "My wife?" He shook his head slightly, wincing at the movement. "I'm sorry, miss, but I think there's been some mistake. I'm not married. I have a girlfriend. Her name is Natalie." The world crumbles. Rebecca felt the room spin around her. Natalie Pierce. The name from Daniel's past. The woman he had dated before they met. The relationship that had ended years ago when Daniel realized they wanted completely different things from life. How could he remember her but not Rebecca? How could 4 years of marriage simply vanish? Dr. Grace Miller, Rebecca's best friend and one of the attending nurses, rushed into the room at the sound of the monitors reacting to Daniel's elevated heart rate. She took one look at Rebecca's pale face and understood immediately that something was terribly wrong. "Mr. Hayes, I'm glad you're awake," Grace said professionally, checking his vitals. "I'm Nurse Miller. You've been in an accident. Can you tell me what you remember?" Daniel's eyes moved from Rebecca to Grace, clearly more comfortable addressing the medical professional. "I remember driving to meet Natalie for dinner. We were celebrating our 2-year anniversary. There was a truck. It ran a red light, I think. Everything after that is blank." He paused, glancing at Rebecca again with that same polite confusion. "This woman says she's my wife, but that can't be right. Natalie and I are planning to get engaged soon." Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Grace shot her a look of deep sympathy before turning back to Daniel. "Mr. Hayes, what year do you think it is?" "It's 2021. September 15th, Daniel answered confidently. "I see," Grace said gently. "Mr. Hayes, I need to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. The accident happened in 2025. You've lost approximately 4 years of memory." Fragments of a life. Daniel's face went white. "That's impossible. You're saying I've lost 4 years?" His voice rose with panic. "Where's Natalie? I need to see Natalie. She must be worried sick." Each word was a knife in Rebecca's heart. She wanted to scream that she was the one who had been worried sick. That she had spent 17 days at his bedside, barely eating, barely sleeping, holding his hand and telling him about their life together. Hoping her voice would reach him wherever he was, Grace squeezed Rebecca's shoulder. "Let me speak with the doctor. He should explain everything to you both." She guided Rebecca toward the door, whispering, "Give him time, honey. The brain is complicated. This doesn't mean the memories are gone forever." But Rebecca barely heard her. She stumbled into the hallway, her legs weak, her mind reeling, How could this be happening? They had been so happy. Just 3 weeks ago, they had celebrated another month together by having a picnic in the park. Laughing as they fed ducks and made plans for the future, Daniel had held her close and told her that loving her was the best decision he had ever made. Now he looked at her like she was a stranger, the past. Turns Rebecca was sitting in the small chapel down the hall, trying to process everything when she heard the click of expensive heels on the hospital floor. She looked up to see a woman she had hoped never to encounter again. Natalie Pierce swept down the hallway like she owned it. Her designer dress perfect, her blonde hair styled impeccably, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't quite reach her calculating eyes. Natalie had always been beautiful in that polished, untouchable way that came from money and privilege. She was everything Rebecca was not. Where Rebecca was warm and approachable, Natalie was cool and commanding. Where Rebecca preferred cozy sweaters and jeans, Natalie wore clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Excuse me," Natalie said to a passing nurse, her voice carrying clearly. "I'm looking for Daniel Hayes. I'm his girlfriend." "I came as soon as I heard about the accident." Rebecca felt sick. She forced herself to stand, to walk back toward Daniel's room. She arrived just as Natalie entered, just in time to see Daniel's face transform with relief and recognition. "Natalie," he breathed, reaching out his hand toward her. "Thank God you're here. Everyone's been telling me crazy things. They say I've lost 4 years of my life." Natalie took his hand, but her eyes flickered to Rebecca, standing in the doorway. For just a moment, Rebecca saw the triumph in them before Natalie masked it with concern. "Oh, Daniel," Natalie said, her voice soft and sympathetic. "I've been so worried. What matters is that you're awake now." Rebecca watched as the man she loved found comfort in another woman's arms. Watched as he held on to Natalie like she was his lifeline. She wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him until he remembered. But what good would that do? In his mind, she truly was a stranger. In his mind, Natalie was the woman he loved. Dr. James Patterson entered the room, his expression grave. He was an older man with kind eyes who had been keeping Rebecca updated throughout Daniel's coma. Now those eyes held sympathy as they landed on her. "Mr. Hayes," he began, "I need to explain your situation clearly. You've experienced what we call retrograde amnesia. The trauma from the accident has caused you to lose memories from the past 4 years. In that time, your relationship with Miss Pierce ended. You met and married Mrs. Anderson. You've been happily married for nearly 4 years. Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, that's impossible. Natalie and I are together. We're in love. We're planning our future."
Actor.
"Daniel," Dr. Patterson continued gently, "I understand this is confusing, but the woman at the door is your legal wife. You have a marriage certificate, a home together, a life you built over 4 years." Rebecca saw Daniel look at her again, really look at her this time. She held her breath, hoping for some flicker of recognition. But there was only confusion and something that looked like frustration. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, and he did sound genuinely apologetic. "I don't remember any of it. I don't remember her. The only thing I'm certain of is what I feel for Natalie." Those words broke something fundamental inside Rebecca. She had known their love was real. She had believed it was unshakable. But how do you fight for a love that only exists in your memory? How do you prove to someone that you're their whole world when they look at you and see nothing? A heart's decision, Natalie's voice cut through Rebecca's thoughts. "Dr. Patterson, surely Daniel shouldn't be stressed with all this right now. He needs time to heal, not to be confused with stories about a life he doesn't remember." Rebecca found her voice, though it shook. "Stories. Our marriage isn't a story. It's real. Daniel, please. I know this is hard, but we love each other. We built a beautiful life together." Daniel looked between the two women, his face showing the strain of trying to process everything. "Look, I'm sorry. I can see you believe what you're saying, but I can't feel something I don't remember. What I remember, what I feel, is that Natalie is the woman I love." Grace appeared at Rebecca's side, gently taking her arm. "Come on, honey. Let's give everyone some space." As Rebecca allowed herself to be led away, she heard Natalie's voice, sweet as poison. "Don't worry, darling. I'm here now. I'll help you through this." In the hallway, Rebecca finally broke down. For years of love, of laughter, of building a life together. For years of morning coffees and evening walks. For years of dreams shared and promises made. All of it gone, erased like words on a foggy mirror. "What do I do?" Rebecca whispered to Grace. "How do I fight for someone who doesn't know me?" Grace hugged her tight. "You do what you've always done. You love him. You be patient. And you trust that real love, true love, leaves marks deeper than memory." But as Rebecca stood in that hospital hallway, listening to the muted voices from Daniel's room, she wondered if love really was enough. Because right now, the man she loved was in there with another woman. And he couldn't remember a single reason why Rebecca's heart was breaking. A house of strangers, 3 days after Daniel woke from his coma, Rebecca found herself standing in front of the home they had bought together 2 years ago. The charming craftsman-style house with its blue shutters and wraparound porch had always felt like a sanctuary. Now it felt like a museum of memories that only she could see. Daniel had insisted on coming home to recover. The doctors agreed it would be better than staying in the hospital. But he had been confused when the address they gave him wasn't Natalie's apartment. He had been even more confused when he saw the photographs covering the walls. Pictures of him and Rebecca laughing on their wedding day. Snapshots from their honeymoon in the mountains. Images of quiet Sunday mornings and grand adventures. "These can't all be real," Daniel had said, studying a photo of himself kissing Rebecca's cheek at what appeared to be a beach bonfire. "They look real, but I don't remember any of it." Rebecca had carefully suggested he stay in the guest room while he recovered and processed everything. The master bedroom, their bedroom, held too many intimate memories. It would be too confusing for him, too overwhelming. What she didn't say was that she couldn't bear to share that space with him while he looked at her with those empty, polite eyes. The web titans Natalie had wasted no time inserting herself into the situation. She appeared at their house the very first day, carrying an overnight bag and wearing an expression of determined concern. "I'm here to help," she announced, breezing past Rebecca as if she owned the place. Daniel needs familiar faces around him, people he actually remembers. Rebecca watched helplessly as Natalie made herself comfortable, arranging fresh flowers in vases, preparing meals in Rebecca's kitchen, sitting beside Daniel on the couch as he rested. Every gesture was calculated to reinforce the narrative that she belonged there, that she was the rightful woman in Daniel's life. "Do you remember when we went to that gallery opening?" Natalie would say, showing Daniel photos on her phone. "You wore that blue suit I picked out for you. You said I had excellent taste?" Daniel would smile at these memories, real memories from years ago, and Rebecca would feel herself becoming more invisible with each passing moment. Grace visited often, offering both medical advice and emotional support. "She's playing a dangerous game," Grace warned one afternoon when she found Rebecca crying in the kitchen. "Those memories she's showing him are from before you. She's trying to trap him in the past." "But that past is all he knows," Rebecca said, wiping her eyes. "To him, the relationship just happened. To him, I'm the intruder." Small moments of light despite Natalie's constant presence. There were moments when Rebecca caught glimpses of something deeper. Daniel would watch her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression puzzled, as if trying to solve a complex equation. When she laughed at something on television, he would tilt his head slightly, as though the sound triggered something just beyond his reach. One evening, Rebecca was making dinner, her movements automatic in the familiar kitchen. She reached for the spice cabinet without looking, grabbed the exact ingredients she needed, moved through the space with practiced ease. When she turned around, Daniel was standing in the doorway, watching her with an odd expression.
"You know this kitchen really well," he observed.
Rebecca's heart jumped. "I should. I've cooked in it almost every day for 2 years." He stepped closer, his brow furrowed. "The way you move, it's like you don't have to think about where anything is. Like your body just knows." "Muscle memory," Rebecca said softly. "We cooked together a lot. You'd chop vegetables while I handled the stove. We'd talk about our days, make each other laugh, steal kisses when the timer went off." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he surprised her by asking, "What's my favorite meal?" Rebecca's breath caught. "Was this a test? Your grandmother's chicken pot pie recipe?" but you only make it on special occasions because it takes forever. Your comfort food is grilled cheese with tomato soup. You like the bread extra crispy, and you always add a pinch of garlic powder to the soup. Daniel stared at her. How could you know that? I've never told anyone about the garlic powder. You told me, Rebecca said, hope blooming in her chest. On our third date, you made it for me when I had a cold? Before Daniel could respond, Natalie appeared, linking her arm through his. There you are, darling. I was looking for you. Come sit down. You shouldn't be on your feet too long. The moment shattered. Daniel allowed himself to be led away, but he glanced back at Rebecca with an expression she couldn't quite read. Confusion? Curiosity? Or was that the beginning of doubt? The family gathering 2 weeks after Daniel came home, his parents hosted a family dinner. Thomas and Jennifer Hayes had always been kind to Rebecca, welcoming her into their family with open arms. But now they seemed uncertain. Caught between supporting their son's current reality and acknowledging the truth of his marriage, the dinner was awkward from the start. Natalie positioned herself beside Daniel, playing the role of devoted girlfriend with practiced ease. She touched his arm constantly, laughed at his comments, reminded him of shared memories from their past relationship. Rebecca sat across from them, feeling like a ghost at her own family gathering. Daniel's younger sister, Amanda, kept shooting her sympathetic looks. But what could anyone say? How could they force Daniel to feel something he didn't remember? After dinner, Jennifer Hayes had organized a small gathering in their spacious living room. She put on music, soft jazz that filled the comfortable space. Thomas pulled Jennifer into a dance, their movements easy and familiar after 40 years of marriage. Dance with me, Natalie said to Daniel, standing and extending her hand. But Daniel hesitated. His eyes had found Rebecca, who was standing by the window, trying to make herself invisible. She was wearing a deep green dress that brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. Her brown hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and impossibly sad. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Without quite understanding why, he stood and walked toward Rebecca instead of Natalie. The room fell silent as everyone watched. Would you dance with me? Daniel asked Rebecca, his voice uncertain but determined. Rebecca looked up at him, surprised. You don't have to do that. I know, he said. But I want to. I can't explain it, but I feel like I should. She took his hand, and the moment their skin touched, both of them felt it. That electric current that had always existed between them. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he drew her into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. They began to move to the music, and something remarkable happened. Their bodies knew the dance, even if Daniel's mind didn't. His hand settled naturally at the small of her back, exactly where it always had. Her head fit perfectly against his shoulder. Their steps synchronized without conscious thought. This feels, Daniel began, his voice rough. Familiar. Rebecca closed her eyes, allowing herself this moment. We danced at our wedding, she whispered. You told me you'd been taking secret lessons for months because you wanted everything to be perfect. She felt him tense slightly, then relax. What song was it? Can't Help Falling in Love. The Elvis version. You said it was how you felt about me. Like falling in love with me was as natural and inevitable as a river flowing to the sea. Daniel was quiet, but Rebecca could feel his heart beating fast against her cheek. When she dared to look up at him, she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not recognition exactly, but something deeper. A stirring like a sleeping part of him was beginning to wake. The song ended, but Daniel didn't immediately let her go. They stood there, swaying slightly, lost in the moment. Around them, the room had gone completely quiet. Even Natalie seemed frozen, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. The jealousy test the next day brought an unexpected shift. Daniel had gone to his architecture firm to check on some projects, and Rebecca had offered to bring him lunch. When she arrived at the modern glass building downtown, she found him in conversation with a colleague, a handsome young architect named Ryan Foster. Ryan had always been friendly with Rebecca, treating her with warm respect whenever their paths crossed. Today was no different. When he saw her approaching with a lunch bag, his face lit up. It's so good to see you. We've all been worried about Daniel. Ryan pulled her into a friendly hug from his office doorway. Daniel watched this interaction with a feeling he couldn't quite name. Something hot and possessive surged through him when he saw another man's arms around Rebecca. His jaw tightened. His hands clenched at his sides. Ryan was still talking, his hand resting casually on Rebecca's arm. "You're looking well. I know this whole situation must be incredibly hard on you." "I'm managing," Rebecca said with a small smile. "Taking it day by day? Well, if you ever need to talk, I'm here," Ryan offered kindly. "I mean it. Even just to grab coffee or something. You shouldn't have to go through this alone." That was when Daniel appeared at their side, his expression dark. "Foster," he said sharply, "don't you have the Henderson project to work on?" Ryan blinked, surprised by his boss's tone. "Yes, of course. I was just saying hello to Rebecca." "She brought my lunch," Daniel said, the words coming out more territorial than he intended. "My wife brought my lunch." The emphasis on wife was clear, and Ryan quickly excused himself. Daniel turned to Rebecca, that strange possessive feeling still churning in his chest. "You know him well?" Rebecca was staring at Daniel with an expression he couldn't read. "Ryan? He's your colleague. We've met at company events. He's always been very nice, seemed very friendly," Daniel said, and there was an edge to his voice that surprised them both. "Daniel," Rebecca said slowly, her heart beginning to race, "are you jealous?" The word hit him like cold water. Was he jealous? He barely knew this woman. He didn't remember her. So why had seeing another man touch her made him want to put his fist through a wall? "I don't know what I am," he admitted roughly. "But I didn't like seeing him touch you." Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "You never liked it when other men got too friendly with me. You weren't controlling about it, but you were definitely protective. Possessive in a way that always made me feel cherished, rather than owned." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "This doesn't make sense. I don't remember you, but I feel like you're mine to protect. Like something in me recognizes something in you, even when my brain doesn't." The breaking point that evening, everything came to a head. Natalie had prepared an elaborate dinner, clearly trying to recreate romantic memories from their past relationship. She had lit candles, played music from their time together, worn a dress Daniel had once complimented, but Daniel seemed distracted throughout the meal, his eyes constantly drifting to where Rebecca sat quietly at the end of the table, pushing food around her plate. When Natalie tried to feed him a bite of dessert, a gesture that was supposed to be intimate and playful, he pulled back slightly. "Natalie, can I talk to you?" he said, standing abruptly. They moved to the living room while Rebecca stayed in the dining room, her heart pounding. She could hear their raised voices, though she couldn't make out all the words. "You're being manipulated," Natalie was saying, her voice sharp despite her attempts to sound caring. "That woman is using your confusion to trap you in a marriage that probably wasn't even real to begin with. Don't talk about her like that." Daniel's voice came back, firm and defensive. "Rebecca has been nothing but patient and kind. She hasn't pressured me for anything. Wake up, Daniel. She's probably after your money. Your family's wealth. Why else would someone like her be with someone like you?" The silence that followed was heavy. Then Daniel's voice came again, colder than Rebecca had ever heard it. "Someone like her? Rebecca's genuine, warm, intelligent. She knows things about me that I've never told anyone. She moves through our house like she belongs there, because she does belong there. And you," his voice dropped dangerously, "you've been trying to manipulate me since I woke up." Rebecca heard footsteps, and then Daniel appeared in the dining room doorway. His face was set in hard lines, but his eyes softened when they landed on her. "Natalie's leaving," he announced, "and she won't be coming back." Natalie appeared behind him, her beautiful face twisted with rage. "You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was letting you convince me that our past meant more than my present," Daniel said firmly. "I may not remember the last 4 years, but I know manipulation when I see it. And I know that whatever Rebecca and I had, it was real enough that my body remembers her even when my mind doesn't." After Natalie left in a fury of slammed doors and tires squealing, Daniel turned to Rebecca. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," he said, moving toward her slowly, as if approaching something precious and fragile. "I'm sorry I let her make you feel like you didn't belong in your own home." Daniel, Rebecca whispered. You defended me. Of course I did, he said, and there was something fierce in his voice. I may not remember loving you, Rebecca, but I can see who you are. I can feel that there's something between us, something important, and I want to understand it. I want to try. Rebecca stood on shaking legs, looking up at the man she loved. What does that mean? Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When she didn't, he cupped her face gently in his hands. It means I want to start over. Not as strangers, but as two people who used to know each other well and are learning each other again. It means I want to understand why my heart races when you walk into a room. Why I get jealous when other men look at you. Why holding you feels like coming home even though I can't remember any of the times I've done it before. You really mean that? Rebecca asked, hardly daring to hope. I really do, Daniel said, and then he did something that surprised them both. He leaned down and pressed his lips gently to her forehead, a gesture that felt achingly familiar to them both. In that moment, with his lips against her skin and her hands clutching his shirt, something shifted. It wasn't memory, not exactly, but it was recognition. A deep, cellular understanding that they belonged to each other in ways that transcended conscious thought. The battle wasn't over. Daniel still didn't remember their life together. But for the first time since the accident, Rebecca felt like they were fighting on the same side. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start rebuilding what they had lost. The unraveling truth the following week brought an unexpected discovery that would change everything. Daniel had decided to sort through some boxes in his home office, trying to piece together the life he couldn't remember. Rebecca had offered to help, and they worked side by side in a companionable silence that felt surprisingly natural. What's this? Daniel asked, pulling out a leather journal from the back of a drawer. Rebecca's breath caught. She recognized it immediately. That's your journal. You started keeping it after we got married? You said you wanted to remember all the good moments, the little things that made life beautiful. Daniel opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the pages filled with his own handwriting. The entries were simple, but powerful. Rebecca watched his face as he read, seeing emotions flicker across his features. September 12th, he read aloud, his voice rough. Today Rebecca laughed so hard at my terrible joke that she snorted. It was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. How did I get so lucky? He turned more pages, his hands trembling slightly. December 3rd. Watched Rebecca sleep this morning. The sunlight caught her hair and I realized I've never believed in souls before, but if they exist, mine recognized hers the moment we met. Rebecca wiped tears from her eyes as Daniel continued reading, his voice growing more emotional with each entry. These were his words, his feelings, undeniable proof of what they had shared. Rebecca. He looked up at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I wrote all this? Every word, she confirmed. You'd write in it at night sometimes, or on weekends. You said you never wanted to forget how much you loved me. Daniel set the journal down carefully and moved toward her. I need to know something. Did Natalie know about us? About our marriage? Rebecca nodded slowly. She knew. When you broke up with her 4 years ago, you were very clear. You told her you had met someone else, someone you wanted to build a real life with. She didn't take it well. The conspiracy revealed as if summoned by the mention of her name. Daniel's phone buzzed with a message. It was from his assistant at work, Mr. Hayes. I found those financial records you asked about regarding the accident investigation. Thought you should see these right away. Within an hour, Daniel and Rebecca were sitting across from a private investigator named Harold Chen, a man Daniel's assistant had recommended. Harold spread photographs and documents across the coffee table, his expression grim. Mr. Hayes, I don't usually deliver news like this, but you need to know the truth about your accident. Harold pointed to a grainy traffic camera photo. This truck that hit you? It was registered to a company owned by one of Miss Pierce's business associates. Rebecca felt her blood run cold. Are you saying it wasn't an accident? I'm saying the investigation raised questions that were never properly answered, Harold continued. The truck driver disappeared before police could question him thoroughly. The company dissolved within days of the incident, and I found evidence of large cash transfers from Miss Pierce's accounts to an offshore entity just before the accident. Daniel's face had gone pale. Natalie tried to kill me? I can't prove that in court, Harold admitted. But the circumstantial evidence is compelling. And there's more. He pulled out another document. Miss Pierce hired a lawyer to challenge the validity of your marriage while you were in a coma. She claimed fraud, said you'd been coerced or manipulated. The case was dismissed when you woke up, but she'd been positioning herself to take control of your assets if you hadn't survived. Rebecca felt sick. She tried to kill him, and when that didn't work, she used his amnesia to manipulate him back into her life. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. A letter into our home. A letter make you feel like you were the outsider. He turned to Rebecca, anguish written across his face. I'm so sorry. The rain that remembers that evening. Dark clouds rolled in over the city, bringing with them a summer storm. Rebecca stood at the kitchen window, watching lightning flash. Across the sky, when she heard Daniel approach from behind. Do you remember what you told me once about rain? He asked quietly. She turned to face him, surprised. What about it? I don't know, he admitted, frustration evident in his voice. But standing here, smelling the rain, watching it fall, something feels important. Like there's a memory just out of reach. Rebecca's heart began to pound. Our wedding day was supposed to rain, she said softly. You checked the forecast obsessively for weeks, worried it would ruin everything. But it stayed clear. Perfect blue skies all day. And that disappointed you, Daniel said slowly, the words coming from somewhere deep inside him. Yes, Rebecca breathed. I told you I'd always wanted to dance in the rain, that there was something romantic about it. You promised that someday we would. Without a word, Daniel took her hand and led her toward the back door. Then let's dance in the rain now. Daniel, you'll get soaked, Rebecca protested, even as he pulled her outside. The rain hit them immediately, warm and insistent. Daniel pulled Rebecca into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and began to move in a slow dance. There was no music except the sound of rain drumming on the roof and patio stones. This is crazy, Rebecca laughed. But she was crying too, tears mixing with rainwater. Maybe Daniel agreed, spinning her gently, but it feels right. It feels like something we should have done a long time ago. They danced in silence for several minutes, their clothes plastered to their bodies, hair dripping, utterly soaked. And then something remarkable happened. Daniel stopped moving, his eyes going wide. The library, he whispered. You were wearing a yellow dress. You had books in your arms, and I wasn't watching where I was going. When we crashed into each other, papers went everywhere. Rebecca's breath caught. You remember? You looked up at me and smiled, and I forgot every excuse I'd been about to make. Daniel continued, his voice wonder-filled. You said, I guess the universe wanted us to meet, and I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Daniel, Rebecca gripped his arms tightly. What else? What else do you remember? Everything, he said, pulling her tighter against him. God, Rebecca, I remember everything. Our first date at that terrible Italian restaurant where the waiter spilled wine all over my shirt. The night I told you I loved you, and you cried because you'd been waiting to hear those words your whole life. The morning I asked you to marry me and you said yes before I could even finish the question. Right. He was crying now too, rain and tears indistinguishable on his face. I remember our wedding, how you walked down the aisle and I couldn't breathe because you were so beautiful. I remember our first night in this house, how we danced in the empty living room because we didn't have furniture yet. I remember every breakfast, every laugh, every moment of loving you. How? Rebecca asked, hardly daring to believe it. Oh. Did you remember? I think, Daniel said, touching his forehead to hers. I think part of me never forgot. My body knew you. My heart knew you. It was just my mind that needed to catch up. And standing here with you in the rain, doing something we'd talked about but never done, it was like the final piece clicked into place. He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense and clear. I love you, Rebecca Anderson Hayes. I loved you before the accident. I love you now, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life. I'm so sorry I forgot. I'm so sorry I hurt you. Yeah. You're here now, Rebecca said, standing on her toes to kiss him. You remember now. That's what matters. Their kiss was deep and desperate, months of pain and longing pouring into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I need to tell you something else," he said. "Even before my full memory came back, I was falling in love with you all over again. Every day, every conversation, every smile, I was choosing you. That's how I know what we have is real. Because even without memory, even starting from nothing, my heart found its way back to you." The healing begins. The next few weeks were a journey of rediscovery and healing. Daniel's memories had returned, but the trauma of the accident and the amnesia had left its mark. They attended counseling together, working through the pain and confusion of those lost months. Natalie was arrested after the private investigator's findings were turned over to the police. The evidence of her involvement in the accident was circumstantial, but enough to warrant investigation. She was charged with fraud and conspiracy, and her carefully constructed life of privilege began to crumble. Daniel threw himself into making up for the time they'd lost. He brought Rebecca flowers every day, wrote her love notes, and left them in unexpected places, held her hand constantly as if afraid she might disappear. "You don't have to try so hard," Rebecca told him one evening as they sat on their porch swing, watching the sunset. "Yes, I do," Daniel insisted, pulling her closer. "I put you through hell. I looked at you like you were a stranger when you were my whole world. I let that woman into our home and made you feel unwelcome in the life we built together." "That wasn't you," Rebecca said firmly. "That was the amnesia. That was Natalie's manipulation. The real you, the you that I fell in love with, never left. He was just hidden for a while." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you know what terrifies me?"
What?
"That I could forget you again. That something could happen, and I could lose these memories, lose you all over again." Rebecca turned to face him fully, taking his face in her hands. "Then we'll make new memories. So many memories that even if your mind forgets, your heart never will. We'll live so fully, love so deeply, that forgetting becomes impossible." "Promise me something," Daniel said, his eyes intense. "Promise me that if something like this ever happens again, you'll fight for us. Even if I don't remember you, even if I'm cruel or confused, don't give up on us." "I never gave up," Rebecca reminded him. "Not for a single day." "No." Daniel smiled, that smile that had captured her heart in a library all those years ago. "That's why I love you." A new beginning. 3 months after Daniel's memory returned, they decided to renew their vows. This time, there was no question about whether it would rain. The ceremony was planned for their backyard garden on a cloudy September afternoon. With rain almost guaranteed, friends and family gathered under a white tent as dark clouds rolled in overhead. Grace served as Rebecca's maid of honor again, and Daniel's sister Amanda stood beside her. Daniel's colleague Ryan, who had since become a good friend to them both, served as a groomsman, and a simple walked down the makeshift aisle in a simple white dress. Rain began to fall, pattering against the tent. But instead of staying under cover, Daniel stepped out into the rain, his hand extended toward her. "Dance with me," he said. Echoing the words from that transformative night weeks ago, Rebecca laughed and took his hand, joining him in the rain. Their guests cheered as the officiant moved to join them. Protected only by an umbrella, Daniel's father held over them. "We've already said vows," Daniel began, rain streaming down his face. "But I want to say new ones. Rebecca, I promise to never take a single day with you for granted. I promise to love you with my whole heart, even if my mind should ever fail me again. I promise to choose you every single day, in every possible way." Rebecca smiled through happy tears. "And I promise to always fight for us. I promise to remind you every day how much you're loved. I promise that, whether in sunshine or rain, in memory or in forgetting, I will stand by your side and love you with everything I am." When they kissed, their family and friends erupted in applause. The rain fell harder, but nobody cared. This was a celebration not just of love, but of love's resilience, its ability to endure and overcome even the most impossible obstacles. Forever forward later that night, after the guests had gone and they were alone in their home, Daniel and Rebecca lay in bed together, listening to the rain that still fell steadily outside their window. "Do you know what the best part of remembering Is? Daniel asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on Rebecca's arm. What? Getting to fall in love with you twice? Once before, with the wonder of discovering something new and perfect. And then again, with the wisdom of knowing exactly how precious it is. Rebecca snuggled closer to him. I fell in love with you twice too. With the man you were and with the man you became while finding your way back to me. No more secrets, no more lost time, Daniel murmured, kissing the top of her head. Just us moving forward together. Together, Rebecca agreed. Always together. As they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, the rain continued to fall, washing away the pain of the past and watering the seeds of their future.
Oh.
They had lost time, lost memories, nearly lost each other. But in the end, love had proven stronger than amnesia, stronger than manipulation, stronger than fear.